Alright, what up everybody, it's BBKDRAGOON. It's a cool way to actually get the damage boost. I love that idea for Orion. We're talking about button layouts today. I've recorded this video a handful of times, but I want to make sure I get it just right. So I am doing this live. I'm going to be doing some demonstration stuff, so if I say something stupid, I do apologize. I've been up late. Anyway, button layouts. Lots of stuff to talk about. First of all, load up into a custom game. Set the time limit to unlimited. Loading into a custom game and just running around is a really important part of learning the controls of Halo, learning the map. T-squared, if you remember the super pro player, stupid noob, you know, fragging like a pro. He would load into custom games every time a new Halo would come out. I remember him talking about, you know, when a new Halo game comes out, his sole focus is figuring out where power weapons and all that jazz are. So hopping into a custom game is a really good way to just practice or warm up. All right, let's go down to the controller. Let's talk about the default button layout. So the default button layout is going to be really familiar to a Call of Duty player. I don't think the default layout is optimal, and I would encourage you to change pretty quickly, essentially. The way it works, sprint is on the left stick, your smart link or your scope is on the left trigger, fire right button, grenade left button, melee right button. I think thrust is B, reload X, switch weapon Y, and jump is A. Now jump on A we'll talk about in a second. It's pretty self-explanatory in a lot of Halo games. We kind of like to get jump off of the A button. That way we keep our right thumb planted on the right stick so we can jump and shoot without having to move our right thumb. So the reason I don't like the default layout that much is the smart link on the left trigger. It's like ADS basically. So the scope and mechanic in this game is the exact same as other Halo games. It just looks different. It's an animation in the way it's styled on screen. It still operates the same exact way as previous Halos. It just looks like ADS, even though it's not ADS. Okay, you're still getting the exact same accuracy from your hip fire shots. This just allows you some more precision when you're aiming. Okay, it's not the same as Call of Duty, right? Or even Destiny, where I don't want to hip fire an enemy from this point. Thing is, we ADS. Okay, we pull in, we smart link our scope. There is D-scope in Halo. That means when you get shot and you're scoped in, it's going to knock you out of the scope. It's going to do that automatically for you, and that's to prevent people from sitting at the back of the map going pew, 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 and just having these really stalemate, boring gunfights. Cough, cough, Halo 4. Halo 4 did not have D-scope, so we had a lot of that stuff. Issue with the left trigger being your scope on default. In a gunfight, you're going to get knocked out of scope a lot. So you're going to get shot, knocks you out of scope. You have to release the left trigger and pull it all the way back in again for you to get back into the scope. And you're going to need to be scoping in and out quite a bit in these gunfights because you're going to get knocked out, you're going to have to come back in. So unless you have an Xbox One like Elite controller or a Scuff or some controller that has those really tight, cool trigger stops, this is a long way for your finger to pull. I don't know if you can hear that, but you get shot, you have to release, you have to re-grab. That takes quite a bit of time in contrast to what it was in other Halo games, which was just clicking the right stick. So let me go over and switch to bump jump here, which is a more traditional layout to previous Halos. Clicking the right stick is how we scoped in previous Halo games. The reason I think this is better is because do you hear how long that takes to actually scope in? I barely have to move like my thumb at all to scope back in. Whereas the trigger, I have to pull the trigger, you know, release it, pull. I hate that like distance. It's so much longer, and I think that's a disadvantage. Bump Jumper and Hell Jumper are the only two layouts. There are 10 layouts, by the way. Bump Jumper and Hell Jumper are the only two layouts that move the jump and clamber button off of the A button. History lesson, the reason this is important. In Halo 2, there was not Bumper Jumper. Jump was always on A, and when you played Halo 2 at a high level, you absolutely had to know button combos, and those were all done with the X, Y, B, A, the face buttons, basically. So what players would do is they'd claw. They'd bring their index finger over to the face buttons, they'd fire with their middle finger, and they'd always keep their right thumb planted on the right stick, because jumping and shooting in Halo is a really important thing. Being able to jump and still keep control of your crosshair in the air is super duper important. They'd claw. They'd use their index finger to do everything. So if I need to reload, I'd just bring it over to X. And the middle finger is the one doing that. The reason was a big thing in Halo was jumping and shooting. Like if you were at the last second right before you were going to die, a lot of people would jump. They'd do a Gandhi Hop in the midair and they'd shoot players. To jump and shoot on any layout where jump is on A, you're going to be at a slight disadvantage because the time it takes to move your right thumb over to the A button and then back to the stick you're not going to have the same accuracy as the player who's able to jump and leave their thumb over on the right stick. So that's the advantage of running on something like bump jumper or held jumper, but it all comes back to what you're most comfortable on. There are players who can claw just fine. If you are a new player, I definitely recommend learning bump jump first, because I do think there's a big advantage, and it's shown, you know, a lot of pro players play on bump jump still. There's an obvious advantage of keeping that right thumb planted on the right stick. Now, let's say you're a player who likes the way default feels, but you don't want to have to contest with the smart link or the scope in mechanic on the left trigger, the thing I pointed out earlier as being a disadvantage. Check out the Halo 4 layout. It's going to be basically almost the exact same with a couple like variations. It's going to feel very similar to default, but you get to smart link over on the right stick, which is an important feature. So I'll throw it back over here on bump jumper. This is going to absolutely come down to your personal preference, okay? Woo! That's a cool jump. Picking a button layout, it's what you're going to be most comfortable on, is going to be the most successful for you. Let's look at some of the other settings that we have. Look inversion, basic, you know, self-explanatory. Flight inversion when you're using vehicles, I think. Toggle crouch is default to on. We want to set this to off. Toggle crouch, when you click the crouch button, you're going to stay in crouch until you click it again. That's not how it was in previous Halo games. Previous Halo games, it's always been off. And one of the advantages of that is the Gandhi Hop. This is pretty common, and I hope, you know, you guys, if you're unfamiliar with it, welcome. Gandhi hopping is when you jump in the air and you spam crouch. And what this is doing is your Spartan is actually crouching in the air. You can kind of see my feet spasming. And that crouch is moving the hitbox for your head down and up very quickly. It's just moving it slightly. And it's used as kind of a desperation technique. You're in a gunfight, a 1v1 fight with the opponent. You're super weak. He's weak as well. You jump and you Gandhi hop. And what you're trying to do there is you're trying to throw off his last headshot. So it gives you just a little bit more time to try and take him out. It's a desperation measure, mind you, because when you jump in Halo, it's very dangerous. You cannot switch your momentum or direction. You know, a jumping player is a sitting duck because you can literally watch him go, and you can pick where you want to fire at them because they can't strafe. The ability to strafe and throw off your opponent, you know, keep them guessing, am I going to go left or right, is super important. So Gandhi hopping is very important. It's not probably as important in Halo 5 just because, I don't know, I've not found the same success with it, but I've still been able to throw off opponents by doing so. Also, when you're crouch walking, keeps you off the radar, you do have to click the left stick, and what they have here is clench protection, which I have disabled to off. So basically, if you're holding down the left stick for a really long time, and then let's say your thumb gets tired, it releases and then clicks again, the clench protection basically would keep you crouching in that situation. I have it turned off. Toggle crouch off because Gandhi hopping, you guys. So we go down to disable assassinations. If you're super competitive, this should be on. If you're not that competitive, this should be off. Or if you have a sweet assassination from a rec card that you want to see. When you go up to an opponent, let's say there's a guy standing here and I backsmack him. In Halo, that's a one-hit kill. Well, what they integrated in Halo 4 is when you're behind him and you hold down the melee button, you're going to go into an assassination animation. It's this really cool, stylish way to kill an opponent, but the problem is it leaves you exposed for a very, very long time. The reason they put this in the game is because in previous Halos, it was very hard to not sometimes accidentally go into the assassination animation. So you'd get, you know, a competitive match, you backsmack somebody, and instead of, you know, continuing to fight, you'd get thrown into this long animation that turns you into a sitting duck. We don't like that. If you're playing arena and competitive stuff, this should absolutely be turned off. There's no objective reason to have it on, unless you want to just look super stylish and take that risk. Maintain sprint. What this will do is after you thrust pack, clamber, or reload, if you continue holding forward, you're going to keep sprinting. So I'm going to thrust pack here. It's going to keep me sprinting, as long as I'm holding the stick forward. If this was off, I'd have to hit the sprint button again after the thrust pack completed or after the clamber. So if I'm going to run, I'm going to clamber. I didn't clamber because I'm bad. If I try and clamber here, he keeps sprinting. One thing to note here is this maintain sprint does not continue after you do a crouch slide. So you're sprinting, you crouch, you do your little slide. You still are going to have to press the sprint button again in order to continue sprinting, and there's a little timing for that. I have maintain sprint on. This one's personal preference. The way you cancel the sprint is just like slamming the stick left or right real quick. Auto stabilize. This is an interesting one. So I'll turn auto stabilize on. This is one of the new abilities. So you jump, you scope in, your Spartan holds in the air. Okay, that's going to be automatic. That's set on to default. This is a cool way to actually get some like nifty kills. I saw Unyshek using it to great effect when he was playing Warzone, and it lets you stay in the air and just get a couple shots. Your guy's going to hover in the air for just a little bit. You get little thruster things. The only way it happens is you jump and you smart link, you scope in. Now, Couple reasons why I have this turned off. Let's go back down to auto stabilize off. Okay. Reason number one, I like to jump snipe. Okay, a lot of people like to jump snipe. If you ever jump and scope, if you have this turned on, if you have it set default to on, you're just going to hover in the air and you become a sitting duck. When sometimes you just need to hit a jump shot, you need to scope in and hit a jump snipe. You know what I'm saying? When it's turned off, what you have to do is you have to hit the sprint button. So you can still do it, you just actually have to input the move yourself, which I'd always like having more control over my Spartan. This one is debatable, it just depends on your playstyle. I do hate the fact that like every time, if it's like enabled, every time I go and I jump in, I can't like do jump scope in snipes, which is important, or jump scope in shots. I have to just get stuck in the air every time that happens. So I would definitely recommend this. The disadvantage is on bump jump, that's on A, so I have to claw when I'm doing this maneuver, otherwise I'm doing that mortal sin of moving the right thumb off the right stick to press A. Alright, only 2 left. Thank you for sticking with me. I know it's a longer video. Hold the clamber is set to on by default. I like it off. Hold the clamber is basically if I keep holding the jump button, he's going to clamber up whatever is in front of him at that time. So he's going to clamber. I don't want to have to hold my left index finger on the left button if I don't have to. I want to have that, you know, available for throwing nades. The option of turning it off requires you to push jump again in order for him to clamber. That was bad. Let's try and clamber this little thing. There we go. So I push the button again. That leaves me free to throw a nade in the air if I wanted to before clambering or whatever. The other thing too is you can accidentally clamber up stuff that you don't want to with hold the clamber on, whereas this, if I get near this ledge, the only way I'm clambering up it is if I actually tap that button again, which can be very important because this animation, this clamber animation, I can't shoot. There's about a period of a second I can't do anything before my weapon is ready again. And the opponent can just shoot and wreck me. So let's say I'm jumping up to just like take a quick peek over at the sniper and I maybe don't want to clamber. I think when hold the clamber is off, you've got a better likelihood of not accidentally clambering up something. If I'm not pressing it, I can just jump, I can peek, I can see what I want to see and not have to worry about, you know, accidentally clambering up it. Our last controller option is vibration. Vibration's turned off. I turned my vibration off way back in Halo Reach, and it changed just about every part of my gameplay. It might have been one of the most important tips that I ever received. Now, this is personal preference. I will never win this fight. I've talked about this for a very long time, and there are players who will always play on vibration. There are pros who play on vibration, but the majority of pros play with vibration turned off. Reason being, it's a stress mechanic. It's sometimes harder to aim with a vibrating controller in your hand. I can't see a good objective argument to something vibrating in your hand aiding you in making very minute, tiny, you know, adjustments to your stick. All of the data on screen that you need to see when you're getting shot is there. You know, you look at a CSGO or a PC player, they don't have vibration and they can handle it just fine. There are all the visual and audio cues you need on screen to know when you're being shot. Vibration turned off might be one of those tips that changes the way you play an FPS game on console forever. I know for me it was. Anytime you're sniping, anytime you're dealing with high stress situations, not having the thing buzz every time you're getting shot doesn't stress you out. It allows you to continue to focus on the shot and it doesn't throw off your aim. There are players who go in to also say, down in the comments, I'm sure, I play with vibration. You're an idiot, BBK. Vibration is not a disadvantage. I need it to know when I'm being shot. And for you guys, I understand I will never win that argument, and that's fine. It's all personal preference, but do give it a try. If you're somebody new, definitely give it a go. Thanks everyone for watching. That's going to do it for button layouts. Next time we're going to be talking about all those juicy Spartan abilities, what they're useful at, and what they're not so useful at. Some cool Magnum Thrust Pack stuff as well. If you found this helpful, please let me know with a like. Share your own opinions down below. I'm not the grand authority on all this. I'm just sharing, you know, my experience and things I've learned from other players throughout the last decade of some good old Halo times. I hope you all are enjoying Halo 5, and I'll talk with you next time.